Chapter 27. A New Threat. Maleven sat upon his throne and watched the recording crystal and then compared the image to the secret recording he had of the former Monster King's death. The name of that Monster King was lost long ago to the sands of time. Except Maleven had found the spellbook of the first Monster King. This spellbook was unlike any spellbook the Tokiki possessed. This one had history interwoven with the spells learned. This one told of the true history and the path. It's him, he survived, and he still has the ring, Maleven said to Sol. Sol peered at the recordings. We were sure that the Flareon that snatched him out of the air had made him. It's lunch. We assumed the ring would survive the processing, he stated tactfully, but due to the magic on the ring, it was unable to be tracked even by our best trackers. I'm aware first among the Tokiki. Sol hated that title not because he was first but because the former third was using it. But whatever magic Maleven had used to gain a new level of power that could rival the former Monster King, perhaps even surpass him, Sol did not know. For now he tolerated and obeyed. It would not be this way forever, and perhaps this traveler might be the key to Maleven's downfall. Maleven saw this moment, this traveler, as the key to finally defeating the Kojin once and for all. The goal, the only thing worth striving for, was the boat. The one condition for the Majin to enter the vessel was to defeat the Kojin. Even their experiments had proved this condition true, thus far at least. He contains the Jatakan shard. As long as that idiot mortal hasn't sold it or discarded it, he thought to himself. The Monster King's ring was a status symbol amongst the Majin. Having it back would establish a precedent that left no room for challenge. Maleven took control through force using a forbidden fourth art. There was the known triangle, the soul arts, the Majin arts, and the curses. But what no one else knew, at least still alive amongst the Majin, was that there was a fourth art. It was banned by the first Monster King, who preceded the former Monster King, to himself making him the third. This art was known as the Transcendent Art, where physical natures and soul natures merged into one, called amalgamation. Maleven knew this was the path of any future Monster King because it was the only path the previous two had in order to rise above and obtain their rank as king. They had to defeat their predecessors. Even the first Monster King had to obtain his position by defeating all the rest of the Tokiki. In the beginning, as far as Maleven knew, it was a free-for-all amongst Cordra and Majin. This was even before the Kojin arrived on the planet. The so-called gods had created and experimented on many kinds of life forms, then pit them against each other in a game of survival and dominance. The Majin won out, and the Monster King won his position by mastering the four paths of power. He then quickly banned the fourth path, knowing full well the potential it led to. This ban stifled learning and progress for tens of thousands of years. Then came the new gods that set up the world voice and reshaped their world, forever cutting them off from leaving this land, except by one boat. Rules were created and the game began. Fine, Maleven would win that game at all costs just to escape this world forever. Leviathan, the name lost to time except for Maleven, that learned of it through extensive research, was the first Majin to learn of the secret art and was the former first amongst the Tokiki in his time. This power was enough to overthrow the Monster King and take his throne. Maleven intended to become stronger before challenging the Monster King as Leviathan had done, but his creative mind saw a potential weakness. A ritual that the former Monster King kept performing century after century. The summoning of a potential apocalypse beast. This ritual made the Monster King vulnerable to pure physical attacks for the short duration of time that his heart was exposed. The plan was to cause a disruption in one of the monster cores, causing an explosion of epic proportions. It took time, research, and he hated to admit secret contacts with the Kojin, but he had acquired an S+ ranked rune according to their ranking measurements. This rune could transform an ordinary ultimate monster core into a bomb that could easily overwhelm all the enchantments and protections set in place. It would have worked if the former Monster King wasn't so powerful with magic and quick of mind. Instead, he got a traveler from another realm that made off with his prize. Still, he accomplished the primary goal, which had been enough until now. He would not let the opportunity slip through his tentacles again. Sol left the royal strategy room and went to his laboratory, then slipped through a secret passage to his real laboratory. Sol was well aware of the transcendent art but not how to obtain it. However, he had a different path in mind to power. It had long been accepted that with summoning magic they could bring beings from other realms to this one. However, the portals have never allowed them to travel in the other direction. Now, though, having the spent crystal that the former Monster King used to transfer energy from this side to the other to be swallowed by the apocalypse beast caused something that indicated it was possible to transform the portals into doorways, making them two-way. Studying the crystal through a highly complex rune magic system gave him an analysis of the magic needed to cross to the other sides. Another system analyzed the magics and elements on the other side now that he could use the depleted crystal twisted by Malavin and the former Monster King. What the readings found caused a wicked grin to form on his otherwise stoic face, for there was one world in one realm that contained beings too powerful to be summoned, and since they were purely spiritual beings, his particular soul art could consume them for power. So if only he could travel there, his rightful place as Monster King would be. Chapter 28. Schrodinger's Rat. Harry, it looks amazing. She's gonna love it. I held up a crystal fire jeweled necklace with an onyx bead cord to the sun to see the heart-shaped gem burn with radiant light. I'm sure. Don't say it, Harry, this is perfect. There is no way she won't like it, plus it has a cool name, the Phoenix Heart. Zeke something. Besides, I know we're hiding our relationship, and she won't be able to wear it out for some time, but it is still perfect. Will you shut? Look, I know what you're going to say, it's too soon, and look behind you, idiot. Harry shouted at me from his floating body right into my ear. I started looking behind me, and my thought acceleration and acceleration skills activated automatically, confusing me because if I was being attacked, my danger sense would have activated as well. Still, as fast as I was with these two skills activated plus my own rank physique, I barely caught sight of the clawed hand that swiped the necklace from my grasp as a gray blur flew past my vision. I know I had a firm grip on that, yet my fingers just let go. What in the world was that? So, Zeke, what were you saying about VeLana's gift? Harry smirked. Shut up, was the only reply I could think of as I took off after the gray blur, enhancing my vision and utilizing burst step with dual mind to keep track of my prey and my footing. Since we had been standing on a rooftop to get better sunlight on the necklace, I raced after my target. It turned out to be a ratkin, and boy was he fast, which surprised me since my astrosense placed him at D rank. So not only was he fast, but he had balls stealing from an A rank hunter. While I chased him through the city, I thought about what I would do to him. Theft in the city had a clear and harsh penalty of death when blessings were involved. In fact, any crime in the city involving blessing users were sentenced to death, or having rune magic etched onto their spines that permanently removed their blessing. The loss of a blessing also tended to lead to suicide, since this place wasn't big on therapy or helping former criminals. While one may think that harsh, and indeed it does reduce overall crime dramatically, it is the nature of blessings that makes imprisoning them difficult. Suppression cuffs could only work for so long, and creating entire buildings in the highly rare substance that can suppress blessings is far too costly. Some high-level teams may carry one or two cuffs in case they need them, but most hunter teams don't. Due to having a princess on our team, TelVurn had two in his inventory, but he was an exception to the rule. So death or capture, which will likely lead to death, were my options. With a sigh, I closed the distance, used burst step to appear in front of the ratkin, then used momentum change to rotate my direction and momentum instantly around, and brought my katana blade in for a quick sweeping strike. However, just before my blade hit, a black box formed around the ratkin and completely engulfed him. My blade went through it just fine, cutting it in two, and since I didn't know what to make of the box, I chopped several more times to slice it into pieces. The pieces then fell to the ground, reformed back into a box, and then opened to reveal the ratkin in one piece before dissipating completely. He looked down at himself, surprised, and then with glee as he exclaimed, "Ha! Ha! The 50-50 death save worked." He then put a finger to his bottom eyelid and pulled it down while sticking his tongue out at me to blow a raspberry. "Too bad, sucker," he shouted before tossing several small metallic orbs at me that erupted into thick smoke. I coughed and waved my hands to clear the smoke that blinded me from all my visions, including astrosense. So I used burst step to push through the smoke and saw him approaching the edge of a rooftop. I burst step again, anticipating him leaping to the next roof when he ducked and rolled his body off the roof and landed on the street below. I of course flew over him and now had no way to change direction. Momentum change required solid footing, and I didn't have VeLana's skill to redirect in midair. Crashing into the side of the other building and falling in a heap to the street, I groaned even though it didn't really hurt, my durability was far too high. No, I groaned because my brain was rattled momentarily, and my vision swam around until I got oriented. With a sigh, the chase was on again. It didn't take long for me to catch up with him despite all my senses telling me he wasn't there, regardless of what my eyes told me. Astrosense was the only other reliable way to track him, and even that was sometimes spotty. When I caught up to him this time, I kicked out one of his legs which snapped inwardly, making it impossible to run from me again. While he cried out in pain, I used Appraiser's Oculus and got back. Name Razakilian. Race Ratkin. Rank Aura Purple. Blessing Master Thief. Abilities: Swift Navigation, Obscure Presence, Shadow Melt. Skills: Swipe T5 R4. Acceleration T3 R2. Thought Acceleration T4 R1. Death Cube T7 R1. Oh wow, a Master Thief. I didn't even know there were classes like that. Master of anything could be useful. I then checked out his Swipe and Death Cube skills. Swipe T5 R4. If the target is unaware, swipe the item, even if they are holding on to it. Death Cube T7 R1. If you are about to receive a lethal blow, you become encased in a death cube. Upon dying, you have a 50% chance to survive, and a 50% chance to die. You will not know until the death cube dissipates. So that was how he stole that. Interesting. Wait, death cube doesn't mention any cooldown, is it possible? Before I could complete my thought, Razakilian began to melt into the street through a shadow from the rooftop. Overhead. I dashed forward and aimed another slice for his head, and sure enough, another black cube appeared, and again it sliced in two and then dissipated, leaving behind an unharmed Ratkin. Razakilian, I suggest you don't do that again unless you believe that death cube will save you a third time? I don't know about you. I removed a gold coin and flipped it, but I don't get heads 3 times in a row too often. He looked wide-eyed at me and then down at his limbs. No, I suppose not. Here. Take it. I'm sorry, but capturing me will lead to my death anyhow. He handed the necklace back to me. Perhaps or perhaps not. How about we make it Chapter 29? To kill monsters. I rarely sleep anymore, but I dream of only nightmares when I do. What my mind blocks out during the transformations, I relive inside the dreamscape as flashes of blood and gore as I dart around an arena. The panicked faces as they desperately attempt to summon their Saragides but can't due to the fear rolling off my aura like a burst dam. However, at the end of the nightmare, in place of a Koth lying on the ground next to me, I look over and see the dead body of my brother. I know it is a nightmare. I'm aware I'm asleep. Yet I can't stop the sobbing until I'm awoken forcibly. Sorry, I was doing it again, wasn't I? It's okay. I know how traumatic your life has been. But you're getting better. You're no longer screaming anymore. Now it is just shakes and sweat, she said, with a small smile. Sorry about that too. It doesn't bother me, it's your side of the bed, not mine, she replied now, grinning. Come on, let's go shower and make breakfast. Those crepes and French toast you make are to die for. Hirashem stood before us on the training grounds just outside the city walls. Congratulations to Kaylin for crossing the threshold and joining Zeke, Akoth, TelVurn, Jackson and VeLana into S rank. Zarasair and Toby, I know you are close and we'll have you there soon enough. Also congrats to Zeke for obtaining the 3rd Soul Art Seed, who now joins Akoth in the journey to unlock it. A round of applause erupted, along with some whistles. Alright, settle down. Today's training will be. Hirashem paused and turned his head to look into the sky. I too looked in that direction, having sensed something powerful flying in our direction. Using enhanced olfactory, I spotted a Cordra the size of at least half the city. Remember that scene on Independence Day when all the people look up into the sky to see an alien ship descend through the clouds? Yeah, this was like that. Upon closer inspection, the Cordra looked like a giant stingray that merged with a whale, but again the size of half a city. There were small spiky protrusions all over the bottom of the monster. Sirens were going off in the city, and the defenses were being activated. We all got a message on our trackers that revealed that all hunters were to gather at the west gate. Well, it seems this will be our new training for the day. Alright, let's head to the gate, Hiram stated. So, any idea what kind of monster that is? I asked. I believe it is a Thurantan Sky Revenger, Harry replied. How do you know that? As we were jogging to the gate, Harry flew in front of my face and used his one eye to stare at me. Are you serious? Do you not remember what I am? A hairy anus? He shot me in the face with his taser, which didn't do anything but blind me. Momentarily still, it caused me to stumble for a moment, and if it wasn't for my enhanced body, I would have face-planted. Arriving at the gate, we saw many other solo hunters and more than a dozen hunter teams, including the only other S-rank team consisting of 3 people. I spotted at least 5 A-rank teams as well, but mostly we had D-rank teams, with only a few B and C in attendance. Standing in front of the gathered crowd was none other than the giant white tower and Dave. Dave had reached S rank some years back and was actually closer to S+ rank now, and I wondered why all these teams were gathered when we had 10 S rankers. I leaned over and whispered to VeLana. She was technically safer to question than Harry, though the claw marks and bite marks I had would like to raise their hands in object. Hey, what threat rank is that, Cordra? Technically speaking, it is Apocalypse. However, in terms of destruction it could be higher, but in terms of hostile intent it is much lower. Normally, this Cordra eats flying prey and tops of trees, but if it does attack, it requires a great deal of force to bring it down. Alright ladies, listen up, Dave shouted in his overwhelmingly deep voice, which felt even greater than when I first met him. I thought about it momentarily while activating dual mind so I could still pay attention. Do our voices change with rank? I hadn't noticed in me or my friends, but maybe we just don't have the ranges to notice. Or could it be that I'm far denser in muscle and organs? Does the impact of sound waves hit me harder now? Maybe I'm completely wrong, who knows? I know, and yes, you're wrong, moron, Harry said next to me. Thanks, buddy, thanks. You always make me feel better. Good, that is what I am known for after all. Sure, definitely that is what you're known for, I replied, rolling my eyes. Reviewing what Dave said in my mind, I heard. Alright, as you all know, we have an inbound Cordra known as the Thurantan Sky Revenger, an Apocalypse-ranked threat. Unlike other Apocalypse beasts, this one is big and as such has far higher levels of durability and power. So here is the plan. This section of the city is already being evacuated, and when the shields fail, because they will, the B and C rank teams will focus on destroying the Barbles. D rank teams, you will be manning the wall defense weapons. Only, and I repeat only, the A and S rank teams will participate in attacking the Cordra directly. Now I know this threat is daunting, indeed even large and powerful, but do not fear. We are hunters and we will hunt our prey. Do not back down, do not die. We will push forward to glory, and should we end up in Valhalla, my translation renamed their word for the afterlife. In fact, I think the closer term should have been Elysium, but I shrugged. We will toast and then hunt. Again. The number of cheers, hollers, and hooting had a direct impact on the rallying cry Dave gave, and not for the first time I wanted to recruit him to our team. Though I could see him and VeLana butting heads as the default leader of our group. She already bucked under Hiram's authority but accepted it due to his rank and overwhelming power. Flying over the Cordra in our flying fortress really displayed just how large this monster was. Our weapons were already in full use, throwing out an array of firepower, while Jackson could have fully automated the weapons he found. That hunter's reflexes were far better. Not that it mattered in this instance, but it did mean that Sarah, Zara, Kaylin, and Toby had to man the guns. Although somehow Toby kept missing. TelVurn stood in the rear hatch and used his own spells, and Jackson set the control on Molly for autopilot. Oh, the name? Yeah, he named the flying fortress Molly after a famous hunter he has a crush on. She too apparently has the same blessing as him. Together Jackson, VeLana, Farah, and I minus Harry leaped off Molly. That sounds not right, and landed on the back of the Thurantan Sky Revenger. Below, more than 50 Barbles shot out from those pointy spike things and slammed into the city's shield, causing a network of spider cracks across it. Another 50 or so Barbles slammed the shields again as the first set retracted. Took exactly 3 more volleys of Barbles before the shield fell. Then the Barbles began to pulverize houses and markets while the hunter teams assigned to destroying them got to work. Like all Cordra above the rank of F, the Apocalypse beast had more than one skill. In this case, the monster had a few dozen skills, one of which was releasing a cloud of toxic gas from the barbels when attacked. Having been prepared, the hunter teams had donned special suits and helmets for the occasion, making them look like advanced military space marines. Another skill the behemoth of a monster deployed was shower of needles, which, despite the size of the Cordra, were not as big as one would have thought. The needles were small, of course, but they were only about arm's length in size. However, unlike rain, a shower meant a far denser coverage area at speeds that would absolutely kill seasoned hunters. Again, the teams were prepared by having either personal skills for shields, deflection, or astrotech designed to create cover from things far deadlier than rain. Still, more than a few hunters failed to calculate their protection versus the threat and became impaled by dozens of needles. Even worse was that some acquired minor blows from the needles under their protection, and their suits became compromised to the toxic fumes, and they too perished. The city defenses were making an impact by destroying barbels at the source and opening countless scores across the beast's underbelly, but the anchor weapons played a vital role in keeping the monster from flying deeper into the city. Giant anchored spear tips punctured the beast's underside and were rooted by woven wired cords 20 inches thick into the ground and backed by advanced rune rituals to arrest the forward movement of the beast. This quadrant of the city became the final stand as the hunter teams gave everything they had. On top of the Cordra, Jackson went mental on the beast with double Gatling guns, and even a new weapon he developed which used railgun technology. I provided his computer with a copy of my Earth's internet minus the cat memes and porn. However, this railgun was different since it was designed to use a 10-foot bolt to shoot downward into an object. His thinking was, if I ever need to penetrate something big, I want to penetrate it deeply. Of course, we made fun of him at the time, but now he had the last laugh. The weapon was set up in a tripod arrangement with a shaft pointed straight down. The bolt was made of a dense magnetic metal but was augmented by rune magic for durability and penetration. It was a one-pump-chump weapon, but it did the job. The weapon made a large and deep hole, and we all poured down the hole as much firepower as we could with all kinds of magical effects. The pyro inferno and chaos flames seemed to do the most damage. The arc and ghostly flames didn't seem to do anything. VeLana's floating blades, however, did get a reaction as she sliced deeply into the wound. The shudder from the creature nearly knocked us off its back. Only our S-rank reaction speed prevented us from making that plunge. We would have survived, of course, but the setback would have cost the city. Hiroshim also got a reaction out of the monster as he deployed several spells in rapid succession, creating massive craters in the backside of the creature. We had never learned what exactly Hiroshim's blessing was, only that we knew it was sage level and a mage class. Still, the amount of elemental damage really indicated he was an elementalist. The ferocity of the fire, wind, stone, and water he tossed about was in epic proportions. We left him to his wing alone as we attacked the other wing and main body as a group. In response to the attack, the Sky Revenger used more skills and we came under attack by flying scale-like creatures that detached themselves from the fins. Aside from those, we had to contend with our footing that suddenly became slick or turned into suction similar to quicksand. Then there were the turrets that sprung up that sent a variety of elemental firepower at us. More and more skills were being activated by the monster that we feared staying on. Its back would not be beneficial in taking it down. Eventually, Dave gave the command to abandon the backside. The other S-rank team and the few A-rank teams, or what was left of them, took no pause as they quickly exited the scene. Dave landed on top of our craft with the rest of our team. We need to attack the underside more. The topside is far too dangerous to continue. Having recently felt the bones that broke inside me mend themselves, I agreed with his assessment. Looking down below, I saw fires raging throughout the city and devastation unlike anything I had seen in a very long time. Suddenly the Thurantan Sky Revenger was struck by a beam of immense power as it pierced straight through the monster, creating a hole that was almost able to cut the creature in half. The monster gave a death cry as it fell sideways and plummeted towards the west wall. The shot came from a sky vessel with a wolf's head at the front with mouth open. The vessel appeared almost space-worthy regarding technology, but I knew it was purely rune magic. Still, the sci-fi vibes it gave off really tickled my Warhammer 40k days. Yes, I was in elite military weapon and part-time gamer of tabletop games. Hey, the jarheads in my barracks could barely read, but the few that did like playing the game. So anything to turn into a drinking game was fine with me. Chapter 30. An unwelcomed reunion. The flying fortress, now known as Molly, landed near the destroyed city wall, where the monster's corpse lay on top of it. We grouped up as a team and let Dave off the ship. We all looked to the sky as the skyship, which was easily 3 times as large as Molly, came to a halt over the area we resided in. Shit, was all VeLana stated before beams of light showed down all around us. In the beams of light came down dozens of Kojin, all bearing weapons against us. Then one more beam down was a figure that VeLana actually hissed at. Brother, what is the meaning of this? She screeched and I winced at her. Pitch. Super hearing, am I right? While the two stared at each other. Menacingly, the sky darkened rapidly. I wasn't sure if it was due to the massive ionization that giant wolf head beam weapon gave off or some other science BS on a magical world, but it began to rain and then downpour. Instinctually, everyone used their auras to block the rain, mostly just a circle shield above their heads. I shaped mine like an umbrella and pretended to hold it while whistling lowly. The looks I got were priceless, but it didn't matter to me. I used the extra time to analyze everyone with appraiser's oculus and reviewed the information. In my HUD, this wasn't good. The dozen or so that beamed down were all S rank, but also higher in Astra than all of us aside from Dave and Hiroshem. VeLana's brother was on par with Dave, but that wasn't the worst part. I sensed with Astra sense that there were at least another 50 or so hidden in the shadows, and while most of them were a rank, there were also another 4S rankers amongst them. VeLana, you are hereby summoned to the royal court. Resistance is unwise, but I hope you do resist. I never imagined you'd make it to this rank or find a way to evolve your blessing, but you are still a nobody, and your fragrant disregard for our traditions is. Say another word, and I will make you regret it. I spoke up foolishly, knowing full well we were far outnumbered, but if I'm not anything but bullheaded. However, it wasn't I that made the first move, it was Hiroshem. Knew well how fast he was, and I also knew he could easily determine how many enemies we were up against, so if he made a move, I knew he was confident in our victory. Hiroshem moved faster than anyone's I could comprehend except for VeLana's brother. He tossed some kind of device, instantly creating a field that slammed Hiroshem into the ground. The purple light was an indication of gravity magic. What did you do, Vraxion? VeLana shouted. I was told to take care of an S+ ranker. I took care of him. You will now submit, as will your entire team. You and your team will be judged and weighed. Hiroshem struggled until he eventually rose to his hands, knees, and then feet. Wow, you are every bit the monster we heard about, but it doesn't matter. The barrier holding you in place was strong enough for when you are at your best. But now, under this much pressure, you're a mere fraction of your true strength. You have no chance of breaking it. Go ahead and rest, I promise. You'll survive as long as everyone else does as they are told. Now would have been the time for me to charge in, but TelVurn beat me to it, and then the whole team broke into action, including Dave. The ones hidden in the shadows revealed themselves, and the sea of enemies descended upon us. Dave took on several S-rankers alone and with brute strength could hold his own. I, too, had several S-rank attackers, but my strength far surpassed their own. We stuck to the well-established team formations, but ultimately it didn't matter. S-rankers are difficult to defeat even when we managed to inflict a great deal of damage on them, even when tossing them into the dome that surrounded this world, which surprised the hell out of me when their bodies smacked against it, or when tossing them off the mountain into the woods. Below, it didn't matter, they kept coming back. Only dislocating their spines from their bodies kept them from rising again, and that was far more difficult than one would imagine. However, when a guttural scream followed by a cry and silence rang out, we all paused to see what had happened. Sarah had her throat cut and then her head severed. I then looked around and saw Toby, Zara, and Kaylin all captured and had weapons to their necks. Enough! Dave shouted. This has gone too far. Vraxion, you have attacked this city and broken the rules of the Alliance. At that moment, the city's hunters and security forces arrived to create a standoff. While our side was still down in terms of rank, we easily outnumbered them 3-1. I started to rage at the sight of Sarah's death, but VeLana and Dave held me back, and Harry worked overtime on clamping down the turmoil brewing in my head. Our laws were broken first, and we are within our rights to force them to return with us or kill them all. You and the S+ ranker were not supposed to be involved, but you put yourself in the fight. We have allowed exceptions on our side. Your allowed exceptions do not extend to the Hunters Association, and you do not want an enemy of our organization. We don't care for your organization, and we can easily raise another 500 A+ rankers to our mission. If we do not get what we want, then we will come in with our full force and armadas and level this city. When I left, there were only a handful of A rankers and everyone else was below B rank, most below D. What happened? VeLana asked. When our grandfather left for the boat, he took all the S and A rankers with him, as it should be. By handing the kingdom over to our father and leaving him the new generation, he was forced to grow our strength again, as it has been for centuries. So we did, with access to 3 nexuses ranging from B to S rank. Father has driven us through those nexuses daily and constantly. Every Lycaean is above A rank, and as you can clearly see, we are the strongest nation by far with the most S rankers ever. So you see, sister, we cannot be opposed. Stop, Jackson spoke up. We will go to Lycaea, however we will not go as prisoners on your ship, nor will we spend 8 months traveling there. What do you propose? Teleporting everyone back? Vraxian laughed. No, I'll improve your engines and then we'll follow your ship in our own ship. I can reduce the trip to a mere month, maybe faster if my calculations of your power source are accurate. Oh, that is an interesting proposal. Vraxian thought about it. Having an upgrade of that proportion is a major improvement and would bring glory to his name. Fine, I agree. We want to bury our friend. Zara spoke up now that she didn't have a blade to her throat. Very well, I agree to your terms. While your mechanic adjusts our engines, you may bury your friend. I'll even toss a large amount of gold to the city for the damages. That will be acceptable, I said. However, we will settle this properly later. Oh, I look forward to it, traveler, but I have one additional requirement. VeLana will travel with me on my ship as insurance of your compliance and protection if you decide to sabotage our ship or attack us with yours. I started to protest, but VeLana put a hand on my chest. It is fine, I'll be all right. It is only for a short time and we've spent plenty of time apart. Longer than this. I nodded at her words but seethed on the inside. Hours later, as we dug the grave and held a funeral, tears fell from many hunters, including those not on our team. We all had impacted this city in many ways, and each one of us had been raised to hero status by many of the locals and hunters alike. Aside from Jackson upgrading their engines and systems, the Lycaeans needed to refuel since their ship used a rechargeable series of monster cores that could be refueled by radioactive metals. Jackson also estimated that we'd have to make a pit stop again to refuel on the way due to the speed increase. Our ship also could refuel, but we had multiple ultimate cores in use, and while our ship was large, it was far smaller than the Lycaean ship. But if they stopped, then we stop, and besides, the destination would be Astromarta, the city of mages. Refueling and restocking food and other goods would take a while, so we decided to stay a full night in the city. While VeLana would not be allowed out, we were still free to see the sights if we could get over our grief in time, that is. Are you sure you don't want me to accompany you on your trip? Dave asked. Oh, we definitely want you to join us, but we didn't want to take you away from your duties. We don't want you to feel obligated, plus Hiroshima is still going with us. Bah. As head of the Hunters Guild in this city, I am free to take a vacation. We still have another S-rank team on hand and many grade A and B rank teams. I noticed you left out the C and below. Those teams are great but have a lot of growing to do. They'll do fine with keeping up with contracts. So it is settled. I, the great warrior Dave, shall join you. Let's drink. We had one last meal and too many rounds of beer before heading off for Astromarta and then Lycaea. But the final toast to Sarah was a solemn, silent one as every patron fully downed their glass and, in perfect sync, slammed their mugs down with a reverberating thud. Everyone saluted as we exited and made our way to our ship. This sucks, Jackson pronounced. We should be blowing up their ship and showing them no mercy. He spat and then readjusted his armor. You know why we can't. Besides the city being in danger, they have VeLana. Kalen said. I know, but we should be mounting a rescue and shoving their heads so far up there. Jackson, I don't disagree with you, brother. However, hiding and running only allowed us to get stronger but did not solve our problems because our enemy has also gotten stronger too. It is time we settled this, I replied, though my thought was about revealing my full truth as the resolution. I used to not hesitate in these situations. However, the nightmares have been causing me many regrets that I just haven't figured out how to deal with. Freaking emotions. Jackson, we will retaliate, and we'll do it in front of VeLana's father. We'll show him our resolve and win our freedom. Ha, TelVurn barked. You're as good as dead, just like we are, because I warned you and you failed to listen. You are nothing to them and will always be nothing because you are not a Lycaean. You are nothing but an offworlder. Weakling that gained blessings far above his measure, but despite all your power and quick rise through ranks, you are still nothing. Now because of you, I will be executed alongside Her Majesty. His lion's mane flicked as he tossed his head to the side in disgust. There wasn't any kind of reply that I could give. I thought I could outpower any opposition, yet Sarah paid the price, and soon the rest of us will too. After all, I'm just one guy and they're a whole kingdom. / I don't want to rain on your depression, but if I remember correctly, you've brought down nations before back on your world. / I don't know, Harry, but this feels different. / You need to stop moaning and remember who you are. If you hope to survive and save everyone, you better man up. Chapter 31. Rage. The flying fortress known as Molly was impressive. It was large enough for multiple small sleeping quarters, a kitchen, and even a training room. The training room was equipped with special gravity weights and special equipment for punching, even with my considerable strength. This was an important factor, since I wasn't in the greatest of moods and needed to vent a lot. As I was punching the machine and numbers in the thousands of psi registered, my speed kept increasing as my anger started to go out of control until finally the machine sparked and the ship rocked. A moment later, Kaylin entered and said, Jackson over the intercom kindly asked me to stop doing that. Kindly, huh? Kaylin asked. Well, swear words were involved, I responded. I chuckled, feeling a little of my anger diminishing. Sorry, I just need to break something or kill something, preferably S rank if you get my meaning. Yeah, I feel the same. Back home in Vindelheim, we grew up in a very peaceful village. Then one day, we received a new noble in town, and within the week, he took over as mayor and ordered our local hunters to expeditions instead of contracts. Because of that, we had no hunters to take care of monster threats when they appeared, and my older brother died to a monster while fishing. The thing is, the monster was known to live in the lake and we had several contracts to get rid of it. When our business started to fail due to the monster attacking our fishermen, my brother went and attempted to fish, knowing the danger. And he died, I assume. Yes, she replied with a bit of sorrow in her eyes. I'm sorry. I got over it eventually, and thankfully Zara was too young to remember. But for the longest time I was so angry that I nearly went and got myself killed trying to fight the monster. I had only just become a blessing user and was way out of my league. Not to mention I hadn't even bonded with any spirits yet. What happened? I got lucky. A hunter finally ignored orders and swooped in and killed the monster. He was what inspired me to become a hunter. But my point is, sometimes we must let others help us make it through, even in times of loss. Yeah, I get it, but... Hey, idiot, a Koth entered. Jackson said you need to have someone punch you in the head, so he sent me. Oh, did he now? I questioned while looking at Kaylin. Yeah, and he said something about using this thingy, he said while tossing an orb onto the ground. I think it's broken though, since it doesn't seem to do anything. I picked it up and with HUD, I scanned it and determined it just needed a little Astra to power it. I took out a rare monster core and an adapter. A screen popped up after rigging the device to the adapter and the power source. Virtual simulation. Combat arena. Choose scenario. Rocky terrain. Sky platform. Lake valley. Dense jungle. Instructions. All contestants that wish to enter, touch the orb and pass Astra into it. I chose the top one without knowing what all the terrain looked like. Then, a Koth touched the orb and placed some of his Astra into the device, and then I did the same afterward, and suddenly we were transported to another location. On the outside, our bodies just fell over and hit the deck. Kaylin squealed and rushed over. What the hell, was that a teleporter? A Koth asked. No, I think this place is not real, and our minds have been transported into that orb. What? Are we stuck? I don't think so, but I also don't see any way out, which means I posed the question. We fight until one loses and then it lets us out. Good. The terrain was certainly rocky. We were in a crater with numerous fissures and jetted spikes all around. Even a few massive boulders were scattered about. I noticed my ring was gone and thus all my weapons. Both Akoth and I attempted to summon our surrogates, but nothing manifested. However, we had our blessings, skills, and strength, as was evident when I picked up a boulder that weighed around a few tons with one hand. Okay, so we beat each other to death and we don't take any real damage in the real world, I stated. That's stupid but suits me just fine, he grinned. I just shook my head at the nonsensical response. Akoth took a fighting stance and activated several abilities and skills as his fists and feet became ablaze with fire. Inner fire also caused his eyes to glow orange, and I could tell his body had become supercharged with power and strength. He needed to match me. I, in turn, activated several skills as well, although Chaos Fire was out and without a weapon I couldn't use skills like Thunderstrike, at least not safely. So, mostly I focused on dual mind, thought acceleration, and stone skin. I could use Seismic Strike and I may use Burst Step occasionally, but something inside me just wanted to use my fists to smash in his stupid face. So we clashed. Akoth burst forth literally and I met his fist head on. Seismic Palm countered his burning fist, but our fists colliding were surprisingly near equal. At first I thought we were clashing at equal strength, but after several connections I could tell he was taking more damage than I was. Regardless, his flame powers were doing a number on me and only served to piss me off even more. Rage phases 1 and 2 escalated in short order, and like the punching machine, my speed sped up with my anger. I began to connect more and more with Akoth's body. His durability was strong, but without his soul powers he couldn't keep up with my aggression, and eventually I hit him so hard that he smashed into a spiked rock and demolished it. A second later I grabbed him and threw him in the opposite direction. He shot across the crater and then through the crust of the crest and into the air. Before he could land, I was there to punch him downward. Upon crashing into the earth, I was there again to kick him across the terrain, and then I burst step to catch up and caught him and began to wail on him while screaming in anger the whole time. The simulation ended and we both woke up on the cold hard floor. I had a pillow under my head while Akoth had none. Geez dude, you got more issues than I do. He checked his body and upon learning he wasn't in pain, he gave a sigh of relief. Ha, I don't care what kind of mental issues you got going on, that was primal, that was epic. No mercy, I say. No, I believe you have the greater issues, Kaylin stated. Hey, why did he get a pillow and I didn't? Kaylin simply stuck her tongue out and blew a raspberry at him. He just stormed off out of the training room. You okay? She asked me. I lay there and took a moment to collect myself. Yeah, I'll be fine. To be honest, I've lost many friends and soldiers under my command. I've killed thousands during the course of my work, but only one death until now has caused me so much pain and confusion that I just didn't know how to cope with. The situation with VeLana's brother makes me want to destroy things, and the fact that I can't is very frustrating. I see, and yeah, I can get that. I'm sorry for what you've been through, but you're the strongest person I know. If anyone can overcome, it is you. I smiled for the first time in a long time. Thanks, your words mean a lot to me. She hugged me, then left the training room, and I turned to my HUD and saw I had increased my skills and gained a new skill. That was interesting to me, since it was all a virtual reality scenario, yet the system or world voice was awarding us. Fascinating. Notice, you have acquired a new skill. New skill acquired. Raged Fist T7R1. Description: when either rage is active or anger has reached a point where logic is diminished, then damage output is increased tenfold. Damage is increased as rage is increased, or anger is increased to the point of true rage. Damage multiplies significantly. While Raged Fist is active, damage received is also increased by 5% per level, up to 30%. Whoa, is the system telling me it can activate skills based on my emotional condition? If I just get angry, I can increase my damage but also increase the amount of damage I take? Damn. Though the output is far better than the input. So, not too bad I guess, but also I hate things outside my control. Yeah, I've been out of control for a while now. Rage and anger are ruling me. And they never used to. I wanted to evolve my emotions to be a better person. For VeLana, but I never had the opportunity to grow properly. I was just thrust from numb sensations to absolute hatred. And all this new stuff in between is difficult to manage. I could probably use a shrink, but screw that, I'll just focus on punching things to solve my emotional state. Seems to be working so. Chapter 32. Astromarta. Ironically, the city of mages was the most futuristic city I've seen so far. It was beyond impressive. The Sky City was impressive with being floating and all and using powerful enchantments, but this city was on another level. The floating towers were the least impressive thing. The flying cars and mythical creatures flying in space lanes baffled the mind. There were also great arcs that curved up and around the city that had buildings on them and people walking around in ways that shouldn't work according to gravity. I felt like I was on a massive space station but built on this world. The city was also 3 times larger than Castellum. Every street was gleaming white with many gold trimmings and glass windows, like shopping marts. Doors would automatically open when approaching them, and magical Roombas cleaned the streets. Oh, and then there were the magical food processors. Like there were these machines people were channeling their Astra into and then choosing what they wanted to eat, and bam, the food was instantly created. Or they were meals accustomed to the times, not the updated food I brought to this world, but still amazing nonetheless. Guess our connections haven't reached this place yet, but still it was utterly amazing. TelVurn had business to take care of while here, so he took off alone. Hiroshim also had graduated from the Magic Academy here, and his rank was more than enough to get us all in with guest passes. Jackson took care of the refueling and restocking, while the Lycaeans took care of their vessel. That left the rest of us free to wander around the city and see the sights. Would have been far more pleasant with VeLana or without a Koth, but he was who I got stuck with. I don't blame the rest of the team, none of them cared for the guy, and a Koth only respected me as an equal. I just wish he'd stop being grumpy and snarling at people that got too close. Where are we going now? Koth questioned but made it sound like he shouted an order. Dude, relax. I just want to check out the magical artifact shop. It is nothing but junk to help weaklings compensate for lack of blessing. That may be true, but there are more things than just fighting in life. Besides, one of my divine blessings is the use of magical technology. If I can find things that I can incorporate into myself, is that not just a part of my strength? He grunted his reply. Okay, Akoth, after this we'll check out the skill shop and then the arena. Okay. Yeah, fine. I knew he was more than fine when I saw the small grin start to form on his lips before it suddenly reset to the default permanent frown. With a ring of the door chime, we entered Mespot's magical miscellaneous gizmos. It was like walking into a Harry Potter shop. Magical gadgets flew, hopped, or even teleported around the shop. I picked up a floating orb with a sign that read, Mespot's magical rain shield. Just press the button and instant protection from rain and sharp winds. If it explodes, it is not my fault. I put it back. As I walked past the glowing worm candy and the tin men playing a board game that looked oddly similar to Risk, I caught a glimpse through a doorway that showed a portal open and a little goblin stepping through. Maybe not a goblin, but she was roughly 3 feet tall, had a large crooked nose and long, pointy ears. The skin wasn't quite green, but it didn't matter as she morphed into a tall 7-foot lanky, flamingo person. She was now humanish, looking aside from the beak and pink skin. When she saw that I saw, she shrugged and told me straight, so, you caught me returning from another universe, so what? You're not snitches, are ye? I was just dealing with a vampire, don't make me go and get Whoa, vampire? And no, we're not from around here, so no worries about the secret. But tell me, you can travel to other universes. Yeah, why you wanna know? Ooh, I see you're an offworlder too. How do you end up here? I flinched at her words and looked to see where Akoth was, but he was still back at the door looking bored or pissed, I couldn't tell. Long story, but I got summoned here by the Monster King by accident. Didn't sound like a long story. I guess it wasn't. So you're the traveler that killed the Monster King. Guess that makes you a legend. Guess so, but hey, can you use a portal to get me home? First of all, there are countless universes and worlds, even if I could find your exact one, that is not how my power works. I have a connection to only a select few, and those are the ones I can travel through. I was visibly bummed and it showed, though I don't know why. I mean, sure, I still have my mission to complete for revenge, but I loved it here. This has become my new home. Yet the idea of not having the possibility of return still hurt somehow. Look, if you want someone who is a real master at portals, you should check out. Check out who? I asked after a minute of pause, and she straight up didn't continue. Information is not free. Buy something first and give a generous tip, and then I'll tell you. I looked at her dumbfounded but then smiled. Mezpot, I'll buy everything. The look on her face was priceless. Her shop's worth of goods was not nearly 200 platinum lighter, and a ring full of things I didn't need later. Mezpot gave me the information I needed. In the arena tonight, the mage known as Avencast the Unblessed has the magical knowledge you seek. Perhaps he'll do you a favor if you do him one. With that, she turned and began to morph back into the tiny woman, and with a wave of her hand, she opened another portal. Oh, and here's a bonus item, she said as she tossed me a disc. I'm sure your divine blessing will have the tool necessary to determine what it does. Also be a dear and lock the door before closing it, and flip the sign to close too, will ye? Then she vanished through the portal. As I closed the door, Akoth gave me a look of surprise or annoyance, not sure. So what was that all about? Did you seriously just buy everything? Never mind, I don't care. Let's just get to the arena. Don't you want to check out the skill shop first? No, buying skills is for women. Let's go, he grunted. Okay, I'll follow you. And leave out the part where I bought a lot of my skills. While we walked, I checked out the disc with my HUD, and Harry also analyzed it. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that disc is instrumental in circumventing portal restrictions. Doing a scan of the city got me some interesting data. Turns out there was a massive enchantment on the whole city, well, several actually, but one of those was to prevent portals from opening. This meant that summoners either couldn't practice their magic here, or they had special equipment that let them get around the restriction. I wonder why that is. Perhaps they had one of those special idiots that summon something powerful that wrecks something big and costs lives? Yeah, I could see that. Well, it made sense for Mezpot to have something like that since she was making use of portals. However, I feel this device is not approved by the city. Better keep it hidden. Placed it in the hidden compartment in my arm. I didn't want to risk placing it in my ring in case it did something weird to the map. Chapter 33. Avencast. Rise of the Mage. This arena, which could be described as a futuristic coliseum, held easily 500,000 people in the stands alone. Then another 300,000 were in the floating booth boxes. I knew the city was large, but I didn't realize it was this large because it was nearly sold out seating, and the audience volume was nearly deafening. Thankfully, the box Hiroshima acquired for us came with built-in rune enchantments to activate for noise cancellation. Only the sounds from the arena came through loud and clear. When the contestants appeared like it was a WWE main event, the crowd going wild was an understatement. I didn't need the magnification magic on the viewing box to see the battle below take place, but it was not entirely unwelcome. However, the addition of food vendors making rounds was more than a delight. For us in the floating boxes, we got our own attendant that would teleport to our box, offer us our selections, and then fetch them immediately. And these dishes and drinks were not from the food processors but authentic cooking. Although I love meat skewers, it was surprising that they had their own version of a hot dog that was truly divine. Belching my satisfaction to everyone else's dismay, I turned my attention to the beginning of the main event. Avencast the Unblessed versus Caduce the Four Seasons. Caduce stayed stationary in the arena, thanks to the impressive defenses he erected with stone, water, wind, and fire. He also had spellcasting down to quick verbal commands and could unleash many powerful spells with extreme mana reduction. Caduce, being an S-ranker and ex-hunter, had an amazing mana pool. However, it was even more than that since he seemed to be able to cast up to 4 spells at once, making him far more formidable than even I would like to admit. Avencast, however, actually had no blessing. This now made a lot more sense. With his title as the Unblessed, with no blessing, there was no ranking I could place him in, which confused me more than anything. Worse, he could cast magics from many classifications or blessings without a grimoire. All previous contestants, including his current foe, had grimoires out with pages flipping madly. But Avencast had no such need. Stone shards sprung up like liquid lava to intercept incoming attacks, and anything that could bypass the stones was intercepted by wind, water, or even fire. Caduce maintained his defenses with efficiency and raw power while also unleashing his own barrages of spells. Lava cannon, wind torrent, stone spears, and water geysers were only a few of the many spells he belted out. Avencast ran in circles around Caduce, sometimes on the ground, sometimes on magical platforms in the air. While his attacks were of a variety of elemental and arcane in nature, a few resonated with odd space warping magic and often returned the enemy's attacks to the source in the wake of his afterimages. Yet, something else was beyond the simple tactics that caught my astral eyes. He was leaving markings on the ground and invisible magical circles in the air above Caduce. Oh, he was creating a ritual unlike any I've seen so far now. That was fascinating, but I could tell by the look on TelVurn's face it was even more impressive than I thought. Caduce! Avencast shouted as he gleefully dodged all his opponent's attacks. Prepare to die. Stop running and face me head, you coward. Caduce shouted back. Get good, you noob. Well, I wasn't a gamer, but I had a roommate that was, and I did, out of boredom, watch him play from time to time. I explicitly remembered the way he pronounced good as good and even remembered the term noob. This guy is from Earth, or at least an alternate Earth. Now I needed to get him on my side. I don't know what that means. Caduce shouted back while unleashing more spells. After another round of trading spells, Avencast's unseen spell in the air finally activated, and a light shone brightly and only got brighter with each magical circle culminating in a beam of utter destruction. The 4-layer defense Caduce had was decimated, and the sound the beam gave off was almost an electronic reverb that resonated within everyone like 1,000 death stars firing off simultaneously. I admit I know that one. When the smoke cleared, Caduce was on one knee with his robes in tatters, revealing his upper torso, which was heavily damaged by burns. The remains of his robes were now only held by his belt and covered his bottom half. The rankers were tough to kill or even rendered unconscious. Plus, by the time we get to the minimum Astra threshold to be S rank, we tend to acquire more than a few skills or spells for defense and healing. Caduce began to heal through an auto spell and then helped speed up his recovery with another verbal spell. When his eyes began to glow and multiple tornadoes sprung into existence, I knew the battle had reached the phase where kid gloves were being removed. Now this is exciting. Jackson roared along with the rest of the crowd. Hey, Zeke, we have arena-style battles back home, but not restricted to just mages. He began and then shouted another whooping shout of excitement as Caduce unleashed powerful fire spells into his dozen or so tornadoes, turning them into fiery displays of destruction. Sorry, what was I saying? Oh, I remember, so back home we have fights like this, but we have all kinds of fighters, and you wouldn't know it by my demeanor, but my family had a long history of being champions in those fights. His demeanor? Jackson had a typically non-combative blessing and had a mind not usually associated with fighting but more with scholarly works, but his demeanor was always that of enthusiastic destruction on a massive scale. Only empowered that destruction by introducing him to guns and other Earth technologies. Did he seriously not view himself as a maniac? Oh really? Yeah, in fact one day I plan on returning and participating myself before we decide to move on to the boat. The boat, we never talked about it, but I guess it was an end goal for everyone. I admit I was curious too, but the idea of going back to my former world was at least a focus for me. All the better if I could make it a temporary visit for revenge. I shook my head and focused back on the fight and my response to Jackson. I can't wait to see that, I told him. Ha, you bet, he said as he took out a large gun and cocked it. Hey, put that away, I shouted. Don't get us banned from here. In the arena, Avencast responded to the glowing red tornadoes of burning death with a conjured black hole. The black void orb gave off an impressive light display as it bent and absorbed the opponent's spells in ways that tornadoes shouldn't bend. You like nature? Avencast shouted. Then I'll give you nature. Avencast created more than a dozen magical circles of different colors and then unleashed a torrent of elemental magics in one of the most impressive displays of multicasting. Each spell rivaled that of the tornadoes fused with fire but were direct attack spells. Streams of water, ice shards, stone spires, blue Fireballs and even visible wind slices struck Caduceus's new defense spells and tore them to shreds. Then Avencast trapped Caduceus in a gravity well and summoned even more elemental attacks from above to rain down on his foe. When the dust cleared, Caduceus lay on his back in a small pool of water, mud, and blood in a crater, scattered with pits of fire and shards of stone and ice. He was barely breathing, and the arbiter of the match called it a win in favor of Avencast. The unblessed. The chorus of yeas and boos were both noticeable, but what was even clearer was the arena guards activating restraining rings on their winner, as if he was a dangerous convict. So this was what it was going to be, a jailbreak. Fine, I can do that, but first I need to prepare the team. Are you sure you want me to cast Omen in their prison? It could accidentally make it even more impossible to penetrate. It is already impossible, so making it more impossible just means we abandon the attack for now. But if it weakens it, we actually have a chance, Hireshem said. Hireshem's advice on the matter was crucial because it gave us a better idea of what we were up against. If Hireshem thought it was nigh impossible, then anything we tried would be suicide. Our only chance was for a negative effect from Zara's Omen ability from her champion Harbinger blessing. The prison's defenses were a compounded effect of many enchantments, all powered by dozens of ultimate monster cores. Not even Jackson wanted to mess with them due to their complexity. Normally, runes that powerful wouldn't be able to be compromised except for a few very rare blessings. Zara's was one of those such blessings. Omen not only went in our favor but also sounded a bell that tolls, meaning the defenses were doomed. Not only did they fail to stop intruders, but since the negative debuff was ranked 2, they didn't even notify anyone that the defenses failed. Now it was up to our team to execute a hostage release without notifying the guards visually. We had a solid and well-thought-out plan, however well-thought-out was not the right phrasing when stealth was not one of our fortes. Essentially, involving any secret mission with Akoth and Jackson meant we would get spotted. We hoped we'd get a decent head start before setting off any alarms. At least, we wouldn't have to deal with powerful defensive enchantments. Why am I wearing this garb again? Akoth complained, questioned for the third time. Because we need to hide our appearance, and Jackson managed to replicate my conceal skill into a weaker version of a rune enchantment. When not if we get spotted, the plan is to have Avencast portal us outside the city, and we don't want the city to know where to look for us by recognizing a bunch of foreigners that just arrived a day ago. Ugh, I know that. He grouched as he tried to shift the hood over his large head without knocking the mask off yet again. We looked like a bunch of ninjas, and worse, we each had different colored suits, turning us into a bunch of freaking Power Rangers. Kaylin, along with Toby, hid in the shadows as best they could, despite one being a large elephanty wearing pink ninja pajamas and the other a bright blue. I'd have to talk with Jackson about his misplaced ideas on stealth later. The two would keep watch on the guards' headquarters. Kaylin would use of Real, the Dark Spirit Knight's gravity ability, should they become alerted to our intrusion. Of Real now at S rank meant he could hold down any guard easily enough, and if any could escape, Toby's new bind spell, Avarice of Despair, would trap them in an insatiable depression, causing them to lose the will to even try and break free. The best part of the spell was that it didn't require precise targeting. It was a wide area spell that only affected the enemy, not even Toby could miss. Knock on wood. The rest of us smashed a hole into the side of the prison and made entry. Sure enough, the defenses were down, and aside from the muted noise of the hole we made thanks to TelVurn, we only had 2 guards nearby that we had to subdue. My speed was more than up to the task of taking down 2 C-rankers before any shouts for backup could be made. We only knew that Avencast was here but not which cell he'd be in, so we searched each one. Jackson even sent out a few drones to help speed up the process since the prison was rather large. I remembered that Castellum didn't bother with prisons since blessings were hard to contain, and I wondered how Astromarta could do it, but then my HUD picked up a rather shocking piece of information. Each cell did, in fact, contain enough rare suppression material to block blessings. However, it was more than that, since that material couldn't stop all the strengths of a blessing user, such as my superior strength, for instance. There were powerful rune enchantments on each cell that seemed to put anyone inside the cell into a stasis of some sort. Astromarta was beyond the typical measures of wealth and power to have all this. Makes me wonder why they employed C-rankers. An alarm went off and Jackson shot the nearest speaker that spooked him. Oops, he said. Looks like my drone was spotted, but the good news is I found him. The bad news is he's guarded by an S ranker. This guy must be very important to them to have a personal guard of that level. I'll take care of him, Hiroshim said while speeding off with a oath and myself hot on his heels. The rest of the team just looked at each other and shrugged before running to catch up. While S rankers were tough to put down, they were not that durable when pummeled by 3 adversaries of the same rank or higher. Plus 2 of us didn't have limitations of incantations to activate our skills. However, the fight spilled out of the prison through a shattered wall, and I let a Koth and Hiroshim finish him off while I smashed the rune enchantment and ripped the metal door off the cell. Removing Avencast from the cell immediately woke him up, and upon seeing the scene he quickly figured out what was taking place and then laughed. Huh. What the hell are you wearing, mate? Don't ask. Just tell me you can create a portal to the outside of the city? No can do, mate. Powerful protections on the city prevent portal use. Don't worry about that, as long as you're near me, you can cast your spell. His eyebrows rose on his forehead as he concentrated on the portal spell. Sent a message for everyone to get here quickly, and within moments we were ready, waiting on Avencast. It took a moment for him to gather the power and visualize the destination, but he opened the portal and we all stepped through. We exited outside the city, but on the wrong side. However, with our speed it didn't take us long to arrive at our ship parked in the visitor docks. Discarding our garments, we made a round of introductions. Then I dived in on the subject of Earth. Chapter 34. Final Destination. Astromarta was epic on a scale that merged magic with technology in a way that blew my mind. However, Lycaia was on a whole other level when it came to sheer mind-blowing honest. I don't even think that is a word, yet it feels like it describes this place perfectly. Imagine a singular mountain. Not a mountain range that expands outward as far as the eye can see, but a singular peak. Now magnify that by several degrees. That almost give it the appearance of spanning outward, but really isn't due to the sheer height. Then imagine that said mountain was broken into many floating shards of rocky terrain that contained parts of a city on each one. Each mountain segment was tethered by rope bridges connecting each piece to the others. The very top segment of the mountain contained the castle that was nearly the size of Castellum alone. There were many skydocks for dozens of ships just like the one we were escorted by, frighteningly telling us of this nation's power and the true success of VeLana's father. We docked at the peak of the spire of the shattered mountain and debarked under heavy guard. I will say this for the Lycaeans, they wasted no time before shoving us into an arena with tens of thousands of viewers. A massive throne rose high into the air at the front of the arena. Aside from the throne with the king of the Lycaeans sitting upon it was a platform with nearly 60 S rankers lined up on both sides. Every single one of them was in full transformation mode, with the king himself being the largest and most powerful. The red light highlighting the background gave off a most ominous vibe, and I gulped involuntarily. Closing my eyes to breathe and center myself, I reached out with AstroSense and got an alarming response. I didn't detect a single being in this room under a rank. This was ridiculous. I know, the prince said. His father was pushing people daily through nexuses. Or is it Nexi? I shrugged. And then sighed. This could go very wrong for us, and we only had a single possible hope of escape with the discovery of Avencast. I always thought my team and I were rapid risers, but now I see anyone with sufficient motivation could do it. Perhaps we did rise faster than most here, due to our relative time frame compared to their lifetime of training, but still, an entire nation rising to this level is alarming. If I didn't know better, I would think they were planning a war soon. The crowd reverberated like a major concert festival, which is to say it was an incoherent cacophony of shouts, jeers, and unflattering words. Yet with the 60S rankers pounded their staffs 3 times in harmony, the noise cut off immediately, and we suddenly became deafened by the silence. Nearly 5 minutes passed without a word from the king as he glared at us. Should we bow or something? I whispered to VeLana. Oh yeah, that's a good idea, but wait, you don't. Only the rest of us should, she said, and then went to a knee. TelVurn had already been bowing his head, which was permissible for him due to his situation, but the rest suddenly dropped to a knee. Yeah, that was awkward, and how did she forget royal etiquette? Also, why not me? Finally, you remember your place, my daughter. You have become most bold in your time away. It would almost seem like you believe you know what is best for our nation, that maybe you want to take control of this great empire. That was not my intention, my king. I merely wanted to keep up with the others and be useful to my team. And what of your relationship with an outsider and a traveler no less? I'm sure you got some amazing tale to spin, Lethviaro Shin. I didn't get the translation on that, but VeLana was trembling with fear and rage, so I assumed it was nothing good. She gritted her teeth to the point. They started to grind, and I could make out of the corner of my eye steam rising off her body. She was channeling a lot of Astra to try and restrain herself. A Lycaean inherently knows the order of the tribe. We feel it in our bones and in our power. That order can change over time, but we all know our order. She began. Father, I feel my position to my team is nothing. There is no order outside social constructs designed to allow teams to function better. However, I have a direct position beneath Zeke that I feel deeply inside. Don't know why, I don't know how, but I know he is an alpha. That took me by surprise. I didn't know she could sense me like that, and it made me wonder how much of that played a part in her attraction to me. I mean, I'm not against it, but sometimes I just thought it was my charm and ruggedly good looks. Oh, and now I understand why she didn't want me to bow. Then, my daughter, we will test him, and should he fail, your fate along with TelVurn's will be the same as his. He turned his head to Hirasham. Hirasham, come stand next to me. The rest of your team will move to the viewing room. Hirasham nodded at us, and everyone except me moved out of the arena. Then, with a flick of the king's finger, 2 S-rankers jumped into the arena. One stood back and let the other go first. As the first approached, he carried 2 staffs and then tossed one to me. I am Lore of Lycaea, and this trial will be fought according to our traditions. The Vrak staff is the only weapon you may use, however, any skills, abilities, and transformations may be used. He said that last part like he was sure I didn't have one or had one that wasn't a Lycaean. I looked down at the staff and saw it was a slightly transparent black metal with swirling red energy inside its core. I scanned it and got back almost no information. It seemed the staff was merely a staff, just enchanted for durability far beyond anything I could access. Good. I removed my coat, tossed it aside, activated my armor release function and removed my Nexus armor. Then I removed my shirt and tossed it aside as well. All I had were my trousers, boots, metal arm, and many glistening bulging muscles. My opponent grinned and he too shed his layers. He then pounded his staff on his chest several times before taking a battle stance. The full transformation of a Lycaean was still humanoid in shape, just with fur, a tail, a snout, and very sharp teeth. I knew I could take him as I was now, but I partially transformed up to phase 4, which gave me the strength boost, heightened senses, and another 2 inches in height of phase 3, but also added sharpened teeth, nails transformed into claws, and my eyes shifted to yellow. Also, the feet inside my boots began to take on a paw-like foot with claws, but the boots' shifting form went unnoticed by everyone. I took a battle stance with the staff in my right hand held to the side and my left hand in front of me with newly displayed claws. I am Ezekiel Conry, Viking of Earth, first amongst my kind, the undying monster slayer, killer of armies, slayer of the monster king, divine blessing. User. I said as I flared up my blessings, and then I cringed a little when I said this. And Alpha. There was a gasp in the crowd, and even Lore's eyes widened suddenly, but the greatest acknowledgement came from VeLana's father, who smiled just barely and briefly. We shall see. Lore shouted before charging me. He was fast, of course, as rankers were, but even without acceleration activated, I was still faster. He brought his staff down in an overhead chop, but in the time he took to leap up and swing down, I spun and changed my grip to that of a baseball bat and came around to strike upward. We connected without weapons for a fraction of a second before my superior strength and power sent him flying into the arena. Barrier. The barrier fluctuated and electrified Lore for a brief moment before releasing him to drop to the ground. He landed on his feet, shook off the tingle, and then charged again, this time with skills activated. I had a moment to activate my own skills during that time and now had skill boost, acceleration, thought acceleration, dual mind, stone skin, barrier, and aura sense activated, along with the various passive ones that were always running, like passive healing, danger sense, and conceal. During the fight, I used dual mind to finally get a full scan of Lore and discovered his sage blessing was savagery, and his abilities were Sage savagery. Ravage. Description. As you take damage, your body becomes stronger and more feral. With loss of reason, the damage multipliers increase significantly. The more damage you've taken, the stronger you become. And sage savagery. Brutality. Description. The more damage you cause, the more strength you gain. The more blood spilled fuels your stamina. Damage increases with each kill for a maximum of 1 minute. Each kill extends that duration. His blessing and abilities were different but not completely unrelated to my own for Berserker. We traded blows more evenly now, yet I could feel his strength growing as I took damage. I realized that with my healing abilities, he could potentially injure me continuously and thus rise in power. Continuously. The good news was that while Ravager grew stronger, his combat technique suffered and grew sloppy. Yet, as the fight progressed, the staffs got batted away and tossed to the side as claws became the dominant weapon. My species trait for venomous claws was taking effect, and I could tell his healing couldn't compensate for it. However, his mindless savagery allowed him to ignore the damage and continue fighting at an alarming pace. At first, there wasn't much movement or using movement skills. We mostly stayed stationary and brawled it out. However, occasionally one of us would get a lucky blow that would send us tumbling and skipping across the arena floor, causing extreme damage. We would recover quickly and re-engage in powerful collisions, causing shockwaves that also tore up the terrain around us. I also got a lot more blows in when he got erratic, but his power was climbing so quickly that things started again to even out. Bloodied and bruised, with more than a few broken bones on both sides, we duked it out. At one point I misjudged how strong an overhead swipe of his claws was as I aimed for a counterattack and took a savage blow to my neck, which sprayed a lot of blood across the cracked and broken ground. Because of that, he was able to sink claws into my ribs and get a good grip before ripping it out. Then he slammed me on the ground and put a foot on my chest. "You are an alpha?" he shouted. "I don't see it. All I see is a weakling that boasts of feats far above his station. You are no Lycaean and no alpha." I mentally sent Harry a message, and he responded with a mental image of a shrug and not so confident thumbs up. "Oh well, here goes nothing." My wounds healed quickly while he monologued, and then I activated Rage up to phase 3 and rapidly transitioned through all phases of my inner beast. "You haven't seen anything yet. I am not a Lycaean. I am a..." My voice shifted as my full transformation took over. "Werewolf." I grabbed his leg, pulled myself up to his chest and shoved my hand through. As my hand protruded out of his back, I held his heart and squeezed. Tossing the body off of me, I rose to my full height of 10 feet and gave a mighty howl, throwing everything I had into shaping my aura with my full dominance, authority, rage, and bloodlust. The waves of aura carried along with my howl gripped the Lycaeans, and even to a lesser degree my companion's instinctual need to kneel. Even the Lycaean king was affected. However, the king resisted and even flooded his own aura outward to counter. Yet only the 6 closest of his S-rankers were covered and subsequently able to resist as well. All the others fell to their knees and planted their heads on the ground. The howl only lasted moments, and when it was over, my aura began to recede. Yet many continued to kneel out of fear. Thanks to Harry, I was able to hold on to my sanity. However, I could see the red in the corner of my vision begin to haze over my eyes. I struggled, and I could hear Harry's voice telling me he was attempting to recalibrate, but I had a lot of anger, pain, and resentment I hadn't quite gotten over, and in this highly emotional state it flooded my mind. "Die!" I yelled and then charged forward. All 6 of the S-rankers above leaped into the arena, and the second S-ranker, already in the arena, rose after recovering and prepared for my charge. Then, shortly after, the rest of the S-rankers recovered and joined the fray. Aside from being at full power with maximum Astra levels thanks to Rage 3, I instinctively activated a weaker version of a bestial art and my 2 soul arts to plow through my enemies. Raged Fist also activated, which increased my damage further when losing control. Every wound I received further enhanced my power, and for a short time I had become nigh unstoppable. In my endless rage and pain, I kept seeing my dead brother as he accused me of murdering him. I saw the innocent people living in a village being eaten as they cursed me. I even saw my enemies as they pitted me for being worse than them. And then one by one, I began to see my allies as I slashed their bodies open, tore out their hearts, and fed upon them. All until VeLana. Her cries pierced my soul and I heard, far more clearly than the others, a pleading for me to stop. Instantly the redness cleared from my vision, and I saw the real VeLana, standing before me with my hand spread apart as my claw was inches from her face. At that new moment I saw my brother forgive me and the people of the village. I saw their kind eyes and happy smiles and all the good times along with the love they shared. I let go of the rage ability and my transformation and resumed my human form. Yet I didn't dare move until VeLana embraced me in a hug, and my arms finally closed around her. "Thank you," I whispered. "Always," she replied. Then I looked around and saw around 18 S-rankers dead and another dozen or so heavily wounded but recovering. Many more were on guard and ready to strike, but it seemed the king had his hand up to restrain them. Through some sort of silent command, the remaining S-rankers relaxed and then pounded their staffs 3 times again, and everyone in the crowd finally got back to their seats and looked around nervously. "This is an unprecedented moment in Lycaean history," the king began. "Today, before us we have not a Lycaean, but a wolfkin nevertheless. Moreover, he is hereby recognized as an alpha and a true partner for my daughter. The wedding will be in 2 weeks. We feast and celebrate tonight and then tomorrow we begin preparations." A cheer went up, and both VeLana and I stared at each other in stunned silence. But when her cheeks turned red, I smiled and squeezed her hand. The rest of the team, thankfully alive, rushed in to congratulate us and pepper me with a dozen questions about what they just witnessed. Promised to explain everything later, and then we were escorted to a banquet hall. Akoth didn't exactly congratulate me, but he did grin and nod at me in approval, or could have been dismay and envy, who knows, which I guess is the best I would get from him. To be continued.